Children of helicopter parents, what was the worst or most embarrassing thing they put you through? My parents are Mormon. I had to clear everything through them. Everything became a pros and cons family debate that ended in WWJD, which was nothing fun apparently. Anytime I did anything unapproved I was guilt tripped and shamed. They had to know where I was at all times. If I didn't answer my phone when they called I was in deep crap. One time they let me go night fishing for catfish with a buddy, then got pee when I rolled home around 4 AM. I got grounded for a month on that one. I wasn't allowed to date even casually. God forbid I even be friends with a girl. To this day I am still painfully awkward around girls. I never learned how to interact with them in anything but a professional capacity. They had my whole life planned out for me. Graduate high school, go on mission, go to bio, marry nice Mormon girl, have children, repeat brainwashing cycle. My junior year of high school they made a mistake. They let me join FFA, Future Farmers of America. That's right, laugh, but one of the most hands-on, educational organizations I've had the pleasure of interacting with. I digress. It was there that I met people that didn't need a god to give meaning to life. It was at this point I hatched a plot to keep my life from being railroaded. I began siphoning off the money I was supposedly giving God as tithing from my pittance of a paycheck from a part-time job. Up until I was 18 I stashed it in a paint can in the crawl space. Then I opened my own bank account and began funneling it there, paying my tithing out of my parent-controlled bank account in cash because I conveniently misplaced my checkbook. Then in my senior year, I borrowed the necessary personal information from my parents and began applying to universities. I got accepted to school and kept a lid on it until a week before school started and I had a fight with my parents and told them I was leaving. I left home. I made a lot of mistakes as I blundered into the unknown as a shy and naive fool. There are some things I wish I could change. But 6 years later here I am free of religious control and am alive and kicking to tell about it. If anyone wants advice on breaking from the church or wants to share your story feel free to PM me. Sorry for the length. For some reason felt like sharing. Not me, but I had an acquaintance whose parents were crazy. 1. Didn't let him watch SpongeBob because they don't want the gay spirits in the house. 2. Only let him watch TV on Saturdays and Sundays. 3. Didn't let him drink juice more than twice a week. 4. Showed him a ton of Black history documentaries which for some reason made him hate white people. 5. Didn't vaccinate him. 6. Didn't let him go to football games or other social gatherings because he was an indigo child. 7. Didn't let him sew to the sex ed puberty class because they didn't want to give him any ideas. 8. He eventually found out and after he masturbated for the first time he got caught and was grounded for 2 months and he came to school crying about how his dong would fall off. I felt bad for him. Never had any friends until I was in high school. First sleepover was 13. Left early for my high school grad. All of my birthday parties. Only allowed out for 1-2 hours. Mom would text me every 10 minutes to check in. Had to ask permission to leave the house. Even just to take the dog out. Cell phone was given to parents at 10 o'clock every night and I had to give them my passwords for every website I went on. Suffered from depression, anxiety and nervous breakdowns on a daily basis. First date with boyfriend. I was 20, only allowed to stay for a half an hour and mom had to be there the whole time. Finally moved out a few months ago. I get texts from my mom every hour on the hour and still have anxiety and have trouble having fun and making friends. I am not one big on seeking mental help but you need to see a therapist. If you cannot afford tone, PM me and I will help pay for it. This is a toxic relationship and until you take control of your life you will not have one. I'm 18. I went to a metal concert by myself this year and did not tell my mum the venue, only that it was in the city somewhere. As far as I was aware, she was staying at home with the rest of my family that night. She manages to somehow track me down as I'm waiting in line to get in. She's completely useless with technology so my best bet is she either quietly stalked me or went through the city for any sign of me. A few months after that I was wandering around the city by myself and didn't hear my phone ring because it was on silent. It's 3 PM in the afternoon. Another ordinary day. I check it a few hours later and have a multitude of missed calls and texts from her going from where are you alright? Please call me back. call Emmy now and then escalating to I'm going to call the police, which of course freaked me out. Apparently she'd freaked about me being kidnapped because I didn't answer my phone right away. Being 18, I totally would have let her call the police. I can just imagine chilling at Starbucks when a couple officers show up. Let's see. Couldn't spend the night at my best friend's house in 6th grade because his father owned a hunting rifle, and my mom read an article recently about kids playing Russian roulette and was afraid my friend who just wanted to play SNES with me was going to force me to play Russian roulette with a hunting rifle, a gun that you can't really play Russian roulette with. In 8th grade, I made a new friend who invited me to his house. My dad insisted on driving over to make sure his mother would be there to supervise me. She happened to be backing out of the driveway when we pulled up. He confronted her, saying if she was leaving that he'd just take me home. She lied to him and told him she was running up to the gas station and would be home in a couple minutes to watch us. Luckily my dad didn't insist on waiting for her. She was so cool for lying to my dad. She actually went to work and left us alone, etc. etc. More crap like that. My parents always wanting to make sure they knew everything I was doing and always making me come home super dang early pretty much completely socially stunted me and made me into someone who totally overcompensated with partying, alcohol and drugs in college. If I had parents who trusted me, maybe I wouldn't have felt partying and needing constant attention was so dang important later in life. In the summer of 2014 I hung up on my mom on the phone because I repeatedly told her I had to get off and go to class and she just kept talking, so I ended the call with an abrupt bye. To punish me, she restricted my phone access so it doesn't work from 11 PM to 6 AM. She has yet to change it back. My parents were always strict, overprotective, but crap really hit the fan when they figured out I was smoking weed and doing some other drugs in high school. Naturally they were extremely upset. I don't blame them for that. I was admittedly doing some stupid crap I shouldn't have been, though my usage in general was educated and fairly safe. I do still have a problem with the ways they handled this knowledge. There were many different punishments, outbursts, and misguided attempts to help me. The night they found out they kept me up until the wee hours tearing apart my room in search of incriminating evidence. My mom would scream and cry on the floor in front of me. They changed the administrator account password on my computer and blocked all the evil websites like Reddit and Irrawad. I quickly remedied that by learning how to retrieve and change the password in single user mode. Thank you terrible MacBook security. I couldn't drive myself anywhere or contact any of my friends for several months except for during classes at school. Speaking of school, they called mine and had me put in lunchtime detention for the entirety of this period. I was miserable and isolated. They also read all of my texts, Reddit comments, Facebook messages, etc. And despite knowing every possible thing she could know, my mom still repeatedly accused me of doing stuff I never did. Things like having sex for drugs, money, or being pregnant, when the most I had done at that age was kiss. The real fun came when they decided I needed therapy. That in itself was fine. I had confessed to feeling very depressed for years in an attempt to explain myself. These therapy sessions had a catch though. They felt they needed to be involved in them so that they could listen directly to whatever I might say. There was one therapist they took me to who was actually sympathetic and kind to me, so they never took me to her again. Naturally they quit trying therapists altogether. Then they decided my difficult confessions of dealing with depression and all the things that came with it were lies and that I was just a frick up. I have more, but this is already too long. As a result of all this, my issues got much worse and any relationship I had with them before was destroyed. It's been a slow and painful process rebuilding things. Years later, I'm still not sure I'll ever fully trust or be able to talk to them about my personal issues. Good lord. Reading all of these responses makes me so glad I grew up as a latchkey kid in the 80s. I even ran away from home once and my parents didn't even notice. My mom thought I was in my room reading. What's shocking to me though is that's it my peers who are the helicopter parents now. I wonder if it's because we all had so much freedom that it freaks out today's parents. I blame the constant influx of news. Every day we hear about some kid that got kidnapped in Kansas, or a teenager who drove drunk and got killed in Maine. These parents see that constant reinforcement of negativity and believe that being overbearing is better than taking risks. I'm no psychologist, just my 2 cents on the subject. I got Facebook in the 8th grade. The only way I was allowed to keep it was to share the password with my mother. And one night a friend of mine was having a problem with a boy. She came to me in what she and I both thought was confidence and told me she had lost her virginity and he pressured her and all that. Not even 5 minutes later I was kicked out of my Facebook session and my mother yelled at me, telling me to shut off the computer, yelled at me for being friends with OS, grounded me, and called her parents. Needless to say that as long as I lived with her, I couldn't really keep any friends. We had a helicopter queen bee in my neighborhood. Other parents modeled their behavior on this woman and enforced ridiculous curfews and restrictions. No hanging out past 10 p.m. Any and all trips require a parent to walk in to ensure you wouldn't be abducted. You didn't have any privacy if you had any relationship with either child. She burrowed into her son and daughter's personal lives and the lives of their friends. Most conversations with her were incited by her startling you with glaring knowledge into any personal dilemmas or academic issues. Anyway, the worst was that you couldn't collaborate with either child in any capacity on school projects. A friend worked with her daughter and called me in tears to vent about how the parent called her to accuse her of not working hard enough and jeopardizing every group member's grades. And then the parent drove over and lectured her about the importance of a work ethic and being proper, to lightly allude to a recent rough breakup this friend had experienced, all while the girl's actual parents were present, and stayed until the parent felt the group would be most likely to receive an A. My dad used to fling the door open in hopes of catching me doing something I wasn't supposed to. One time he caught me with a girl's legs over my shoulders, laying pipe like I was getting paid, no blanket or nothing. Jesus. Eye contact was made, dominance assessed. My dad never pulled that crap again. That was the day I brought the chopper down. I can just imagine the look on your dad's face as you asserted your dominance. I feel like my experiences are mild compared to others here, but my dad was a nut job. Insisted on buying me really overly ugly clothes so boys wouldn't pay attention to me. I was still at the age where boys were definitely not looking at me, maybe 7 or 8. At 12 or 13, I walked over to a park around the corner from my house with some friends. Granted we didn't live in a great area, but he literally got in his car and started driving in circles around the park. My friends made fun of me for weeks. If he got off work early he would try to find me on my relatively short walk home from school to make sure I was staying out of trouble. If I was even a minute late home from school, I'd be grounded as soon as I got home. This was back in middle school when nobody I knew had a cell phone and we had no way of contacting our parents if anything happened on the way home. Grounded for questioning anything. Got my access to the family computer and iPad taken away for asking why I couldn't go to a local dance. If I wanted to hang out with my friends, my parents demanded that they call and talk to my friends' parents first. This went on until I was 16. Went to a specialized high school in grade 9 and 10 that didn't have school buses. Wasn't allowed to take the city bus because it was dangerous and had to wait around the school for an hour and a half every day for my mom to come pick me up. This was prime time for these two guys who harassed me constantly to follow me around and say really demeaning things and try to grope me. Was honestly in more danger at the school than on the bus. From age 12-17, woke up at least once a week to my dad snooping around my room looking for drugs. Would demand the password to my account on the family computer, then go around and delete random programs, like Malwarebytes. WTF. When I bought a laptop with my own money at 17, would demand that he could use to access his fantasy football sites, then would snoop around my internet history, constantly accused of sleeping around and being pregnant, starting in middle school, accused of being a lesbian, accused of either eating too much or having an eating disorder, which ironically made me develop an eating disorder, was basically told I didn't have the right to privacy, haven't talked to him in a year, feels great. Helicopter parents should go and live their own lives out to fulfill their goals instead of trying to do it vicariously through their children. In my case, one of the worst things was that they are always trying to do my school projects for me because they thought they had better ideas. So either I'd let them do it but then secretly do my own, or I'd do one according to their criteria and then a totally different one to hand in. Like one time I had a science report to write in grade 4 and it was an independent research project with a presentation at the end. I did it on the ethics of cloning, but they didn't agree with what I thought. I was very open-minded and optimistic to the possible improvements to society. They thought it was blasphemous. So I had to make a version of the essay in PowerPoint that they liked and memorize a script that they wrote out word for word and practice it in front of them until I got it down 100%. I don't know what peed me off more, the fact that their arguments were poorly worded and lacked a good flow and I had to pretend crap like that was my own. Or that it was so unfair to be stifled like this while my friends' parents were just so incredibly chill. Anyways, I still did all the work 2 times over, gave my own version of the project and got the highest mark in my class. I'm good enough on my own and my helicopter parents can suck it. Drops mic. A little late, and this wasn't me, it was my ex, who is my daughter's mom. We dated throughout high school. We'll call her Amy. When Amy was in the 7th grade, I started walking her home every once in a while. I was in 8th grade. I would simply walk with her 2 blocks to her house on the way to my destination. This lasted for a week, and then she started getting picked up after school. When she was in the 9th grade, her parents pulled her out of school to homeschool her because they felt that she had fallen in with the wrong crowd. Apparently the local church group whose parents were all teachers and very active in the community was the wrong crowd. She wasn't supposed to date or really have any friends except the few her parents had chosen for her. To see her, we had to sneak around, and this eventually turned into hey, let's sneak out every night and climb into the other's bedroom window, and surprisingly, this led to her getting pregnant at 19. When she was still living with her parents and subject to their rules. She never finished high school. She ended up sleeping around with every guy out there and marrying a sex offender. She never sees our child. She is my inspiration to make sure my kids have the freedom they need to be themselves and a sense of autonomy. She clearly was stunted emotionally and mentally by her parents' abuse, and then she sought out the most controlling, violent husband she could find, and now lives in his home rarely leaving, with 3 daughters, who are children of a violent sex offender who has been in jail for abuse several times. Give your kids some freedom, people. It is your business where they are and what they are up to, but that involvement should start to lessen year by year starting at age 12. By the time they are 16, you should be able to trust your child within reason to be pretty much autonomous, as long as they're meeting their obligations. You don't give them a 9 PM bedtime, but you pay attention, and if they seem tired, you make them to go bed at 9 PM for a few days to catch up on sleep. You don't go through their phones, but you do teach them that everything they put into writing is permanent, and to properly represent themselves. You don't keep them in the dark about sex, or forbid it. You make sure they understand the possible consequences, encourage them to wait until they are ready, and teach them to be safe. Your goal as a parent is to put yourself out of a job. In other words, get them to the point that they don't need a parent. That will never happen if you're making all their decisions or refusing to let them be free and be themselves. I met a new friend in school when I was 17. When we made plans for me to spend the weekend with him, my mother made me ride with her while she followed him to his mother's house, where she went inside and had a long talk with her about what I am and am not allowed to do. I was the bad influence on the child of helicopter parents. For a sleepover at her house, I brought over a book, for kids, mind you, about how babies were conceived. Her dad caught us reading it because he had to have been listening at the door. To this day I remember his words as he confiscated the book. "We'll teach our daughter about sex." Apparently not, because 6 years later her mom supposedly had another baby even though she'd told us she couldn't have any more children. I'm an only child, so when I left for college it was tough on my mom, especially since her and my dad had just gotten divorced about a year and a half before. I remember one time she called and I had forgotten my phone when my friends and I went on a trip to Target, which took us a few hours because we also stopped by somewhere to eat. I came back and found like over 30 missed calls from her. I called her back and found out that she was on her way up. It was only a 2-hour drive, because she was worried that something had happened to me. I told her that I just forgot my phone and after a while talked some reason into her that what she did was pretty over the top. All the other ones make me think people have some crazy butt parents, but this one makes me sad for your mother, for some reason. When I was in elementary school, my grandma would walk to the end of the driveway and scream, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad of it," and wave at me. This was until I was like 11 years old. I went to public school. This is less helicopter parenting and more just embarrassing for you. One story that just popped into my mind was when my mother arranged a meeting with the school principal. She kept trying to get the principal to explain just how important school and grades are to my life. But the principal instead tried to convince her that I was one of the best students and that my grades were near the top of my class. But it's his attitude that's the problem. He's so smart he should be the best in the class. This led the principal to turn the conversation more to the fact the mother was being too hard on me. This did not end well. My mom cut the meeting short in a huff and I'll never forget the ride home. She was yelling and ranting about how hard she was trying to make sure I had a good life and a good future and how that fool of a principal didn't even seem to care and so on and so on. Parents and mothers of Reddit, please let your children live their lives. This won't be easy because they'll always look like infants to you. Consider me a warning of what can happen if you don't. On paper I should have been successful because, frankly, I'm good looking and quite intelligent. But I don't trust people and I tend to isolate myself. I'm in my 30s and never had a girlfriend, nor have I had a job that lasted longer than maybe 14 months. I don't get fired. I just quit and move away. I've done this many times now. I'm broken for no good reason. I used to think my parents were helicopter parents because my friends would have massive parties like 4 or 5 times a week and would all sleep over afterwards. My parents refused to let me sleep over ever and I could only ever go to a party every other week or so. I resented the fact that I didn't get to be a cool kid since I rarely went to the parties and never got to sleep over, so I missed a ton of inside jokes because my parents were afraid of underage orgies. I thought that assumption was ridiculous. Jokes on everyone. Those giant sleepovers turned out to actually be giant, underage orgies. I grew up in a cult, so it was less helicopter parents and more crazy as frick cult of rules. I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone outside the cult. I couldn't be alone with boys except my brothers. I couldn't watch TV or eat certain types of food, milk, cheese, meats, etc. because they were unclean. I couldn't ride a bike or do boy things like play baseball or be interested in cars. I couldn't cut my hair and had to wear a stupid dress everywhere. I had to attend nightly readings of the Bible and cult books where I would be forced to analyze every single word for extra meanings. My parents told me that everyone outside the cult was evil and potentially a literal demon. They believe that the world will end soon, but that before that happens the cult members will be rounded up and shot by the government. Yet, I was always scared growing up. On 9/11 they said that the world was ending because the signs had come to pass and that at any moment government agents would show up and shoot us all dead. Heavy sigh. They are crazy. So this thread is full of insane helicopter parents. Mine weren't that bad, just high expectation Asian parents. I was the kid who scored tops on all the papers and ranked 1 in the year. Know what I paid for that? No TV whatsoever. It's just garbage, and to be fair, even as a kid I knew things like Voltron and Captain Power were just fantasies. Also, could hang around with other kids but curfew in the evening? That's fair. It's not like you can play or ride your bike in the dark, am I right? Still, that did mean I basically hung around nearby the house. So I didn't really get to hang out with the other kids at malls or parks or wherever kids hang out to interact. See, that's what I lost out on. Peer interaction. My parents weren't terrible people like you read in these other posts. They were just too fixated on what I should accomplish. Remember those meme pics about a Chinese guy wearing surgical garb holding his newborn infant son? With the caption, "Son, you're going to be a doctor?" Yep, all work and barely stimulating play. You can only amuse yourself so much. Turned me from an average little boy into a bookish nerd and a ton of missed social cues. By the time teens rolled in, I was that guy in the corner nobody talked to because I didn't have a freaking clue what to talk about with the other kids. TV? I didn't get to watch it, remember. Over time the gap just widened and I basically said frick it, and just did my own thing. Now nearly 40 and the folks wonder why I never got around to dating. You wanted me to hit the books. So I did. We're paying you to go to college to study, not to pick up girls. Fine. Whatever. Now suddenly when I start working I'm magically supposed to catch up on all the years I blew out on mingling with my peers? Yeah, that's not going to happen. I've found my people, and they're internet shitposters. Thanks mom and dad. The ironic thing is, people like me have adapted to the lack of interaction. You could lock me in a library alone by myself and I would be fine, while regular people would probably start going crazy. I was once deployed on a rural posting where for 3 years mid-1990s, I basically lived in a house myself out in the country, and the only human interaction was the weekly grocery runs to the supermarket in the town about half an hour's drive through lonely plantation roads and forested areas. HQ thought there were 2 other guys there. They were actually at the town. I only emailed them. I never actually met them. Had a lot of free time for gaming and reading. I actually had fun. But I can imagine it would be some kind of nightmare scenario for most people. For me that time was the best job ever, until HQ recalled me after the 3 years and promoted me into a desk job in the city. Bleh. I knew a guy whose parents went along with him when he went out to a goth club for the first time. He actually was into the look aesthetic but they weren't. It was so awkward trying to chill out and have a good night with a pair of distinctly non-goth parents standing up the back peering at their son and giving each other proud smiles. My mom used to sleep in a tent outside my bedroom window every night to catch me sneaking out. I never once snuck out of my window. I went out the front door when she was out back. Amateurs. Came to read about how your parents made you wear 2 puffy coats in the winter or some similarly wacky stories. This is much more disturbing. My mom would drive behind the school bus every morning on my way to school because she felt the morning driver didn't focus enough and she wanted to make sure I got to school alive. She also made me wear 2 t-shirts whenever I swam in our pool to ensure I wouldn't develop skin cancer. Also, I didn't eat my first hot dog until I was 15 and decided to sneak one because she was afraid I'd get stomach cancer. She was a neurotic helicopter combination. A special breed, if you will. I couldn't stay out past 9 PM when I was in high school because that's when kids start having sex and doing drugs. Amazingly, I managed to smoke pot well before 9 PM. Mine would follow me home from school and catch me slipping. When I got home I would get grilled on what I did after school. Did you go straight home? What time did you get home? How long did you take to get home? What did you do while you walked home? Apparently she had been getting off from work early to spy on me walking home so I could get in trouble for playing around while I walked home from school. I was just doing normal boy stuff like pretending my umbrella was a machine gun rocket launcher and shooting up my entire neighborhood on my walk home. When you got in trouble she enjoyed double jeopardy. Not only did she already know what you did wrong because she spied on you and set traps, she would also try to get you to confess and then you would get in trouble for lying about what you did on top of what you actually did wrong. And eventually she went overboard and her traps started giving false positives so I would get beatings for things I didn't even do. The worst part is she could have just been a good mom and given me a ride home. Mom found out I was chatting with random guys online when I was like 13. She ripped the door handle off my door and threw my computer in her closet and made me sleep on her floor for 2 nights before my dad was like, okay, I don't want her in our room anymore. I went years without a doorknob before a friend got me one for Christmas. But hey, never did it again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.